The frozen land of the north sighed beneath a thin veil of spring thaw, and Jon Snow felt it as surely as he felt the slow, stubborn pulse that still beat within him despite the deaths, betrayals and rebirths that had trailed his life like hungry wolves. Snowmelt dripped from Winterfell's ramparts, whispering a rhythm that echoed the unsettled cadence of the realm. The long night had been driven back, yet dawn had not quite claimed the sky. Westeros remained a bruised body, aching and unsteady, unsure of whose banner would fly when the bruises faded. Jon stood upon the battlement above the Godswood, gloved hands wrapped about stone as cold as a corpse's brow. Ghost lay at his feet, ears pricked into the breeze, the dire wolf's white pelt, marbled by slivers of scarlet where battle wounds had scabbed and healed, rippled whenever the wind shifted. Below, the heart tree stretched its boughs like a pale giant just waking, red leaves clinging stubbornly despite winter's assault. He no longer wore black, for the brothers who once called him Lord Commander were scattered, and the vows he made had died beside so many comrades upon the wall. Yet the somber hue clung to him even in memory. Dark clothes, dark thoughts, dark destiny. He had once believed himself content to be no more than Ned Stark's bastard son, a shadow in the halls of Winterfell. But destiny, it seemed, refused to leave him lurking in corners. A cautious step sounded behind him. Samwell Tarly, breathless, arrived holding a bundle of weather-stained parchments close to his chest. "Jon," Sam gasped, cheeks flushed from the climb. "There's something you ought to see." Jon raised an eyebrow. Sam in a frenzy was a rare sight, the maesterly calm head adopted since Old Town rarely cracked. Sam thrust forward the parchments with trembling excitement. Ink had faded to brown scratches, and edges crumbled at the slightest pressure, yet the illustrations were unmistakable. A dragon's egg, black as night, threaded with seams of red so deep they could be mistaken for living veins. "It's in Balerion," Sam said, voice low. "A sailor from Driftmark traded it to the Citadel decades ago for debt forgiveness. Forgotten on some dusty shelf. I copied the text." He swallowed. "It speaks of an egg thought lost since the days of Balerion the Black Dread." Jon blinked. He had heard enough tales to be skeptical of lost treasures conveniently found. Still, the barbs of fate had a habit of snagging him at his most vulnerable moments. "I have no claim to dragons," Jon said. But the words tasted of denial, not truth. Targaryen blood warred in his veins with stark honor, and though he tried to starve that dragon within, it stirred. Sam's eyes shone behind spectacles. "The scroll claims the egg was secreted away to prevent Maegor's heirs from using it. It was hidden in the catacombs beneath Dragonstone. No one ever found it." "Nenderol." Ghost gave a low growl, as though sensing the conversation's weight. Jon stroked the direwolf's head. "If this is true, it cannot remain in moldy archives. It belongs to the realm. And to you," Sam said gently. "A song of ice and fire runs through your blood. An egg of the Black Dread himself. If it hatches, it could change everything." He hesitated. "Think what you might do with a dragon loyal to a just ruler." Jon thought of Daenerys, her eyes like molten amethyst, her promise of breaking chains that had curdled into a rain of fire and ash upon King's Landing. He remembered her last breath, and the way her dragon screamed when she died. A shudder rattled his ribs. "Dragons destroy as often as they defend," he muttered. "So do swords," Sam countered softly. "Yet we still forge them, hoping the right hand will wield them." And spring's thaw proved a thin veil. Snows returned with angry winds before the fortnight ended, but Jon left Winterfell regardless. He traveled cloaked in anonymity, only Davos Seaworth accompanying him past White Harbor. Call. It felt fitting. Davos, who once smuggled onions through a blockade, now smuggled a king without a crown toward the gloom-soaked shores of Dragonstone. The voyage south hugged the coast, sails half-reefed to avoid notice. At night, when winter constellations shimmered above black waters, Jon dreamt of black wings and roaring fire, of ancient conquerors and newly forged crowns. Often he woke with ghosts' red eyes studying him in silent worry. Dragonstone greeted them like a beast carved of shadow, its walls sharp as fangs, Its towers twisted into reptilian shapes that clawed the sky. They landed under cover of night, and Davos bribed sentries with coin and false orders sealed in the king's name. No one questioned a sealord's ring on Davos' finger. The castle's inhabitants, reduced to a skeleton garrison following the war, kept to central halls, leaving outer tunnels unguarded. Jon carried a torch, its flame a lone star swallowed by endless gloom. The tunnels beneath Dragonstone smelled of sulfur, a reminder of the volcano that birthed the island in fire and ruin. Bas-relief carvings of dragons stalked the walls, eyes glittering red where rubies once lodged. Steps spiraled downward until even the sea's crash faded. The catacombs were littered with broken statuary and rusted chains that once bound hatchlings in the days when Balerion tamers bred cruelty to match their beasts. Sam's copied map guided Jon through a maze of turns measured in finger widths and steps counted in breaths. At last he reached a sealed archway, a slab of obsidian shaped like a dragon's maw. Strange runes shimmered when his torchlight kissed them. He pressed, expecting ancient stone to resist, but the door shifted with a hiss like a creature rousing. Inside lay a single pedestal draped in dust, thicker than cobwebs. Upon it rested the egg. It was beautiful and terrible, an ovoid of midnight, veins of scarlet pulsing faintly, as though a living ember glowed within. Jon lifted it with both hands. It was warm, heavier than iron. A tremor skittered beneath the shell. A heartbeat, ghost's growl, became a howl that reverberated through the chamber. Jon braced, expecting guards, but no clang of boots came. Only the egg's steady thrum answered the direwolf's cry. In that instant Jon felt every hush-whispered rumor of dragon lore surge through him. Eggs hatch when they will, for those they choose, and sometimes not at all. To wake a dragon, one must gift it blood and fire. He thought of the red woman's flames dancing on snow, and of the hand that plunged a dagger into his heart on a black night at Castle Black. Blood and fire, his life had offered both in cruel abundance. He left the chamber with the egg cupped to his breast, heart drumming a tempo he could not quiet. And no, Dragonstone's forge room had cooled since war's end, yet the ashes of once mighty braziers still hummed with latent heat. Davos stood watch at the door while Jon placed the egg upon a bed of coal. There was no time for elaborate rituals. Dawn threatened the secrecy their mission required. Yet dragons, Sam's texts insisted, answered not to time but to truth of purpose. Jon sliced his palm with the edge of Longclaw, the Valyrian steel bright, even in low light. Blood welled, black in the forge's dimness. He let it drip across the eggshell, each drop sizzling where it struck. Next he stoked the forge's pit. Bellows wheezing as embers sprang to life. Heat engulfed the chamber. Sweat beaded on his brow. The egg shimmered, veins glowing bright as molten gold. A crack spider webbed across the surface, thin as hair at first widening. Jon's breath caught. He had seen dragons hatch before, on the Dothraki Sea beside Daenerys, back when wonder seemed possible. But this felt different. A memory revived, a legacy reborn. A wedge of shell fell away. Smoke coiled. From the fissure emerged a snout as black as onyx, eyes glowing red-orange like hot coals. The hatchling shook free shards of shell, wings unfolding in shuddering spasms. Its scales bore veins of crimson identical to its shell, and its horns curved wickedly back toward a tail ridged with barbs. Jon knelt. The dragon peered at him, sniffed the air heavy with his blood, and exhaled a puff of smoke. Its gaze held ancient intelligence despite its newborn size. Davos muttered a prayer to the Seven. "Seven, save us," he whispered. But there was awe in his voice. Jon extended his wounded hand. The hatchling licked the blood with a tongue like hot leather. Pain flared, but Jon did not flinch. Bond sealed in blood and fire. So the legend said. The dragon's eyes dimmed, embers banked, yet still fierce. It stepped forward, claws clinking on stone, and climbed Jon's arm to perch upon his shoulder. Its weight surprised him. Solid muscle beneath wet scales. Jon stroked its neck, heart lumbering in his chest. Umbrax. he whispered, the name tumbling unbidden from some half-remembered Balerion term for shadow flame. The dragon chirruped, approving. How large do you think it'll grow? Davos asked. Large enough, Jon replied. If it lives. And what then? Davos' question hung in the fiery air. What then indeed? A dragon alone could not feed the realm, nor mend broken oaths. Yet with dragonfire, perhaps old injustices could be burned away, forging something new from their ashes. He thought of Aegon the Conqueror, of Visenya and Rhaenys, of kingdoms bent beneath wings that darkened the skies. But conquest for conquest's sake had birthed as many tyrants as heroes. If Jon was to raise a new dragon, he must refuse the steps that led to madness. He bound his hand, cradling Umbrax beside his collar. The hatchling clung, tail coiling about his neck like warm steel. Its heartbeat quickened with his own. And I will travel north with a dragon, even a hatchling, risked discovery, and fear breeds crossbow bolts quicker than reason. They hid Umbrax in a reinforced chest padded with straw, holes bored for air. The creature protested at first, but soon settled, lulled by Jon's whispered old-tongue lullabies, learned from old Nan's tales. At sea, the hatchling dined on freshly caught fish, bones cracking between tiny, needle-sharp teeth. Word spread fast that a black-scaled wormling had been sighted on the narrow sea. Yet rumor also claimed the beast belonged to Triarchs of Volantis, or was a glamour cast by Lyseni warlocks. Conflicting tales blurred truth. At White Harbor, Jon parted ways with Davos, who vowed to spread whispers of a northern coalition seeking peace between lords, rather than blood. Davos' silver tongue would plant seeds. Jon returned to Winterfell under the guile of night, escorted by a handful of trusted spears, who had sworn oath to house Stark since childhood. Sansa met him in the Great Hall. Her hair shone like flame in torchlight, and her eyes, once soft, had become cutting sapphire since she'd donned a crown of the North. She studied the chest beside him with a curiosity guarded by political calculus. "Brother," she greeted, voice formal despite warmth beneath. "The ravens bring uneasy tidings. From River Run to Dorne, lords posture with new ambition. They sense a vacuum." Jon nodded. "Vacuum invites predators." He hesitated, considering how to reveal his burden. "I found something that may fill it." He opened the chest. Umbrax lifted its head, hissed at the brightness, wings half spread. Sansa gasped. Half delight, half fear. A dragon in Winterfell. She whispered. "The North will tremble. The realm will," Jon corrected. "If we guide it wisely, we could unify the kingdoms without drowning them in war." A bitter smile flickered. "Unity is forged by swords, not words," she said. "And dragons are blades of fire." Jon tightened the chest's lid so only a crack remained for Umbrax's eyes. "Then let us temper this blade, so it cuts only what must be cut." And no. Training a dragon north of the neck posed challenges unfamiliar even to ancient Valyrians. The cold stunted Umbrax's growth, forcing Jon to build fires large enough to mimic Dragonstone's forges. In a clearing beyond the Godswood, they raised stone pillars blackened by nightly flame. Jon fed the hatchling goats and deer, each kill teaching it to rake claws and douse prey in flickers of hellish breath. Ghosts circled, half curious, half jealous. Word reached them by Raven. Queen Sansa's envoys encountered resistance from southern lords wary of a Stark ascendancy. The Riverlands simmered. Dorne licked wounds. Storm's End looked seaward, hungry for commerce more than war. In King's Landing, a council of uneasy nobles ruled in the shadow of smoldering rubble, each vying to anoint a new monarch, but unable to agree. The realm needed a story, Sam wrote from the Citadel. A tale strong enough to bind the hearts of men the way Aegon's dragons had. "Jon, will you give them one?" Jon read Sam's words by candle. Umbrax coiled at his feet with smoke curling from nostrils. "A story," Jon mused. "Not of conquest alone, but of renewal." Aegon had forged a new realm, Perhaps Jon could reforge it. Yet he remembered the screams of King's Landing, the stench of burning flesh, and knew that dragons alone would not suffice. He must wield justice alongside fire. And now, when Umbrax's wings cleared the height of a warhorse and lengthened enough for gliding, Jon prepared for first flight. The air was crisp, the horizon bruised purple with dawn. He wore furs stitched with hidden Balerion steel links, gifts from Gendry, who forged them while reciting tales of Azor Ahai reborn. Jon climbed a makeshift ramp built atop Winterfell's broken outer wall. Umbrax crouched, restless, tail slicing arcs in the snow. Jon straddled the dragon's neck ridge. Scales prickled through his gloves like cooled magma. He whispered in Balerion, words gleaned from parchments and memories of Denaries. Lullabies. "Liquor it," he murmured. "Bye." Umbrax leapt. Wings beat, sending powdered snow spiraling. They soared above pine and tower alike, the world falling away until Winterfell became a toy keep upon a child's map. Jon's stomach lurched, but exhilaration swallowed fear. Wind roared past. The dragon's back rippled with muscle. Ghosts howl, chased them skyward. A farewell and blessing. Below, the north lay vast and white, a kingdom of ice in slow thaw. For a heartbeat Jon saw with dragon's eyes, a tapestry of rivers like shimmering silver threads, forests dark and deep as memory, and villages clinging to warmth like fireflies. Umbrax banked, angling south. Jon guided with knees and whispered words, learning a language of subtlety between rider and beast. Distance shrank beneath wings. Moat Caelin's ruinous towers slid by. Then the green expanse of the neck, the muddy rivers of the Twins, and onward to the Trident where reeds whispered of old rebellions. By dusk they circled Riverrun, where banners of Tully trout snapped in a sullen wind. Garrisoned archers scrambled, but none dared loose. The sight of black wings blotting the sun dredged up enough nightmares of dragons past to freeze resolve. Jon did not land. He wished only to be seen. Umbrax belched a stream of fire into the sky, a comet's tail of orange, before banking north again. The message traveled faster than ravens. A new dragon rider had taken wing. And no. Council fires burned late in Winterfell. Lords sworn to House Stark argued beneath banners heavy with snowmelt. The great hall's timbers creaked with centuries of grudges. Lord Manderly pleaded for trade routes reopened. Lady Glover demanded Umbrax remain in the north lest southern lords conspire to steal him. The younger Karstark heir suggested selling Dragonfire to the highest bidder. His father cuffed him for greed before Jon could speak. Sansa sat at the high seat, listening, weighing every word. When silence fell, she looked to Jon. "You would fly to King's Landing?" she said, not a question. "I would," Jon answered. "A dragon's presence alone can call lords to the table. If we speak of reforging the realm, the seat of the realm must hear. And if they answer with scorpions?" Lord Serwyn asked. Jon's mouth thinned. "Then Umbrax and I will burn the machines, not the people behind them. Fear must not rule this dragon. Justice will." Benchak. His words felt fragile, yet he clung to them with the ferocity of a dying man to a final breath. The hall murmured. Some faces bore hope, others doubt. Sansa's lips pressed tight, but at last she nodded. "The North stands with you," she said. "But remember, dragons do not quell ambition. They merely direct it. Guard your soul, brother." He bowed. Umbrax's shadow flickered across the wall, cast by torchlight. It seemed to writhe like living history, the ghost of Balerion reborn through a hatchling's heartbeat. And Jon departed at dawn amid hoarfrost that glittered like broken glass. Sam arrived unexpectedly, breath puffing in the cold. "Take this," he said, handing over a slim leather-bound tome. Genesis Valyria. Fragments of law older than Aegon. It speaks of the Pactum Draconis, the responsibility of dragon lords to protect weak and strong alike. Jon tucked it into his satchel. Valyrian laws held little weight among Westerosi lords, yet principle carried its own authority. Umbrax lurched into flight, wings beating thunder. Jon felt the North's eyes follow him until white hills vanished into cloud. Southward they soared across a tapestry of war-scarred fields. Here and there tents huddled, soldiers drawn by rumors of a crownless king astride midnight flame. Some cheered, others prayed. None dared challenge. When at last King's Landing rose on the horizon, Jon saw the city's wounds still raw. A charred skeleton of towers, neighborhoods collapsed into ash. Yet new cranes lifted beams, and colored awnings sprouted like wildflowers amid ruin. People clung to life. They always did. From the air, the dragon pit resembled a ring of broken teeth. Umbrax circled above its shattered dome. Memories of Drogon's cry echoed in stone. Jon guided the hatchling down, hooves of leathery wings stirring dust as they landed where once Balerion and Vagar were chained. A delegation awaited. Cloth of gold cloaks, sigils of Tyrell rose, Baratheon stag, and Lannister lion stitched side by side in uneasy truce. Their leader, a gaunt lord whose name Jon barely recalled, stepped forward, voice trembling as he addressed the rider. "Are you king?" the lord stammered. Jon dismounted, boots crunching charred rubble. Ghost prowled behind, having arrived by ship days earlier. "I claim no throne," Jon said, voice carrying across the pit. "But I bear a dragon. Hear me and choose. Cling to rival claims until kingdoms bleed, or reforge the realm as one realm, under a code that protects great and small." Murmurs rippled. Eyes flicked to Umbrax, who hissed, smoke dribbling from nostrils. Fear flavored the air like iron. Yet Jon saw a spark of yearning too, the hope that someone might salvage order from chaos. A maester approached, parchment trembling in hand. "What code, my lord?" Jon drew the slim tome Sam had gifted. "This, the Pactum Draconis." He opened to a page where Valyrian glyphs inked in scarlet bled into margin notes. "Duty, mercy, balance. Swear to these laws," Jon said, "and I will pledge Dragonfire to defend any city that honors them, northern or southern, highborn or low. Breach them, and Dragonfire will purge the corruption." It was a gamble, appealing to idealism rather than fealty. Yet he sensed hearts shift in that silence. Tyrants sprout when hope withers. Feed hope, and tyranny starves. A young knight lifted his helm. "If we choose you as king, will you bind the dragon never to burn again what was innocently built?" Jon met the knight's gaze. "A king's word alone is wind. The realm will shape that oath. I will accept a council representing every kingdom. Together we craft laws to leash dragon and ruler alike." Whispers grew. The gaunt lord frowned. Doubtful, maybe fearful of losing influence. Yet even he could not ignore Umbrax's glare. Jon rested a hand on the hatchling's scales. "Balerion once forged a realm through fear. I would forge stability through justice. Help me, and the dragon is yours as much as mine." Dane. Andor. In the days that followed, delegates poured into the capital. Storm lords with salt-crusted cloaks, Dornish nobles scented with sun-dried citrus, reachmen bearing saplings they swore would take root in ash. They met beneath the ruins of the Red Keep's lesser hall, rebuilding timbers around the table as they argued, as though architecture and government might rise in tandem. Sam arrived to serve as chronicler, quill poised, eyes wide. Sansa rode south with a guard of northern spears. Arya stalked corridors in silence, reading men the way wolves read wind. Bran, now Lord of Ravenskull rather than king, sent ravens thick with riddles, support hidden in cryptic verse. Jon presided but did not command. He listened. When tempers flared, he calmed them. When fear threatened, he let Umbrax appear. Not to terrorize, but to remind them of a power that would not bow to petty greed. Slowly, joints locked by mistrust loosened. A charter took shape. Every castle must house a hall of the people, each lord sworn to present grievances monthly. River tolls capped. Harvest levies standardized. Orphan tax established to fund bread and schooling for war-lost children. The North retained self-rule, yet vowed aid when southern harvests failed. Dorne secured rights to govern under its own laws so long as they aligned with the Charter's core. Umbrax grew with each passing moon. His wings spanned nearly thrice Jon's height. Scales now a deep obsidian shimmering like oil-slicked water. Torchlight danced across ridges that pulsed red beneath the black. He hunted goats on the Blackwater Rush, and scorched deadwood to lighten coal shortage. Children of Flea Bottom followed his flights, cheering, yet not all cheered. In the shadow of the High Septon's sept, a conclave of lords plotted. They claimed dragons corrupt men and laws alike, that Jon's charter would shatter ancient privileges. Gold flowed to sellsword captains in Liss, crossbow makers in mire-filled crates bound for Westeros. In the Reach, an exiled branch of House Hightower rumored to keep shards of scorpion bolts cast in dragonglass. Jon sensed unrest as a taste in the wind. Peace, like glass, sparkled, but cracked with unseen pressure. At council, he urged enforcement of treason laws, yet refused preemptive strikes. "We stand for mercy first," he insisted. Sansa warned him. "Mercy without vigilance is merely permission." Jon heard her cloak rustle as she left, felt Umbrax's tail coil tighter around the crumbled parapet where they stood. He knew she was right, but could not let fear justify tyranny. The first bolt came at dusk, fired from a narrow street, whose name no map cared to etch. It missed Umbrax by a heartbeat, embedding in stone with a metallic shriek. Umbrax whirled, flames searing the alley into molten ruin before Jon reined him. Screams rose. The crossbowman was ash, but innocence writhed with burns caught in the wake. Jon dismounted into charred horror, tears carving soot on cheeks. He carried a burned child to the healer's tent, hands shaking. That night he walked the ramparts, chainmail cold on his aching shoulders, pondering the line between defense and devastation. Umbrax paced below, uneasy, sensing his rider's turmoil. And now, winter crept south again, as though insulted that spring dared intrude. Frost silvered banners above King's Landing, and Umbrax's breath fogged like ghost fire. The realm's charter was ratified beneath vaulted beams of a newly built chamber, oak polished by refugees turned craftsmen, chandeliers forged from melted spears. Scroll work along the chamber walls depicted dragons not as conquerors, but guardians, wings sheltering fields, ripe with grain. Jon knelt in that hall before 7 cloaked septons, and bowed his head as they placed no crown, merely a circlet of plain steel, about his brow. He had refused gold and gemstones. He wanted no shine that might eclipse the charter's promise. The proclamation named him protector of the realm, a title chosen to imply stewardship rather than ownership. The lords pledged swords to uphold the new codes. Small folk cheered outside, though some lords muttered that their birthrights had been shorn like wool. Umbrax roared atop the dragon pit's skeletal dome, fire spiraling skyward as bells tolled. Yet in the echo of bells, Jon heard cannons of dissent, buried but not broken. Endoan. Far across the narrow sea, in the free city of Myr, master engineers unveiled scorpion ballistae, rumored to punch through iron and scale alike. Sellsail captains whispered of a bounty for Umbrax's head. Gold dragons glittered on tables of taverns where killers drank. Back in Westeros, grain blight struck the stormlands. Some blamed dragon waste seeping into soil. In truth, locusts carried by warm winds devoured crops. But rumor seldom shared space with reason. A lord took up arms, claiming the charter demanded grain relief that had not arrived. Jon dispatched wagons of barley, and Yoren Blackwater's veteran guard. Yet resentment fermented. Sam counseled patience. Laws take root slow. Sansa counters. Roots rot if fields not guarded. Jon walked betwixt counsel, heavier with each step. On a cold, moonless night, assassins slipped into the dragon pit. They carried spears tipped with greenish glass, poison forged in the basilisk isles. A stable boy glimpsed steel glint and screamed. Umbrax awoke in fury, tail smashing stone, flame incinerating intruders. Yet one spear struck home. Shard lodging beneath a wing joint. Poison spread. Scales paling. Jon, roused by thunderous roars, found his dragon thrashing. Maesters worked feverishly, but the venom defied their drafts. Days stretched into weeks. Umbrax weakened, reduced to fitful rasps. Jon remained at his side, reading old Balerion writs for antidotes, feeding him blood-warmed milk laced with crushed moon tears. But the wound festered. Rumors soared. The dragon dies. The charter dies with him. Lords withdrew pledges. Bandits tested roads anew. The realm tottered on the fulcrum of a single beast's breath. Jon refused defeat. He recalled Sam's earliest translations. Pactum Draconis demanded symbiosis. Dragon protects realm. Realm sustains dragon. He needed more than maesters. He needed sorcery older than Valyria. He turned to Melisandre's scattered papers salvaged from burned camps. Among her fire visions he found mention of shadowbinders in Ashai, who brewed elixirs for glass-blood curses, like the one plaguing Umbrax. Jon resolved to sail east, but if he left, the fragile realm might fracture. Sansa stepped forward. "I will regent the realm," she said. "Go." Jon clasped her hand, saw strength there that once had been fear. He departed on a swift galley with Ghost and a handful of unsullied volunteers who had sworn loyalty to Daenerys' legacy and now to him. Across churning seas, they sailed through storms that seemed conjured by vengeful gods. Ghost howled at thunder while Jon prayed not to gods but to love. Love of those who yet believed in gentle power. Ashai reared on the horizon like a nightmare carved from obsidian. Shadow behind shadow cloaked twisted towers. The air tasted of smoke and salt, and something older than death. Jon's party trudged streets where torches flickered blue. Citizens moved like whispers, faces veiled. They found a shadowbinder known as Mother in Night. She listened to Jon's plea, eyes black pits reflecting candle flame. For a price, blood of king and dragon alike, she would brew elixir of night-glass dissolution. Jon offered his arm without hesitation. She cut deep, collecting blood in a bowl etched with runes that writhed like insects. The brew roiled violet, steaming with odors of cinnamon and rot. With it clutched tight, Jon fled Ashai's creeping dread, sailing home as if chased by dark wings. Umbrax lay near death upon his return. Scales dulled to ashen gray. Jon preed the spear shard from beneath the wing. He poured the elixir into the wound. Smoke hissed. Umbrax writhed, roared weakly, then collapsed. Hours passed while Jon knelt, forehead against cold scale. At dawn, the dragon's eyes opened, embers rekindled. Scales flushed black once more. Umbrax rose, wings beating slow but strong. Jon wept, embracing the massive neck. He could no longer encircle with arms. News of the dragon's recovery rippled across the realm, carrying with it renewed faith. But Jon understood. They had survived one assault, and more would follow. Power invites challenge, and justice paid in words needs blade and shield to stand. He ordered smiths in Qohor, famed for girding Dothraki Arax, to forge light armor plating layered with Valyrian steel scales for Umbrax's vulnerable joints. He trained a corps of riders, from Dorne's hawk-eyed sky chasers to Vale's mountain-bred scouts. In aerial tactics, though none yet rode dragons, they studied wind maps, siege design, and wildfire containment. Jon adopted wariness as second nature, yet clung to mercy as first instinct. For he had watched Daenerys succumb to righteous certainty and burn innocence. He would not travel her path. Better 1,000 sleepless nights than one day when fire reigned unchecked. And now, 3 years passed in uneasy peace, though uprisings sputtered like sparks across hay-dry fields. Each time, Jon answered with charters and sanctions, lifting sword only when words failed. Umbrax matured into a giant whose wingspan eclipsed Drogon's at comparable age. His fire-tempered steel for new plows as often as it vanquished bandit hives. Songs began to drift along tavern aisles. Of the Black Wolf King astride midnight flame, forging justice from tragedy. Yet prophecy stirred in the east. The Dothraki spoke of a Khal who would claim the sky from a dragon's back, while priests of Aelor whispered of living shadow riding star-born beast. Spies reported emissaries from Korth, offering mountains of gold to any sellsword who could siphon dragon blood for alchemical rites. Jon saw the horizon darken anew, and so he penned decrees. Shipwrights to construct sky barges arming crossbow nests, maesters to form academies teaching charter law, septons to preach unity not through fear of flame, but hope of fairness. He traveled, Old Town to Dreadfort, Umbrax overhead, greeting crowds with low passes that shampooed faces in warm wind. Children reached skyward, laughter bright. Men who once plotted lowered weapons, awed or chastened. One crisp morning Jon stood upon the hill of Rhaenys, ashes long since cleared, a new garden rising. He planted a sapling, a weirwood gifted by Sansa, its white bark stark against red chokeberry bushes. Umbrax circled above, casting shifting shadows over marble paths. Sam approached, ink-smudged, holding fresh parchment. "It's ready," he announced. The final draft of the Realms Compact. 32 articles, signed by every great house. Jon traced the seal impressions. Wolves, lions, roses, krakens, stags, suns, towers, all pressed into wax of unified crimson. He breathed a silent oath. "Will it hold?" Jon asked. Sam smiled weary hope. "Laws are words, but people give them life. And people, well, they love a good story. Yours has dragonfire, kings without crowns, and second chances. It might just work." "Then?" Jon gazed at the fledgling weirwood, roots burrowing deep, branches reaching sky. He thought of his father, of Ygritte, of a red-haired queen in another life, of a silver-haired girl whose dream scorched a city. He thought of brothers lost and sisters found, of ghosts loyal beyond death. Then he looked up at the black dragon carving circles against cloud. Flame and shadow, hope and dread. Aegon once set out to conquer, and triumphed through surrender when swords bent beneath dragons. Jon had set out to reforge, to temper steel with compassion, not terror. Umbrax descended, wings beating earthward gusts. Jon placed a hand on rough pebbled snout. The dragon's eye glimmered, fire contained, awaiting command. "Let's write the next chapter," Jon whispered. Above them, the wind carried new sounds. Merchant stalls opening, children practicing charter oaths, hammers forging not swords, but nails for homes yet unbuilt. The realm survived, scarred, cautious but alive. And somewhere in the Riverlands, a girl with no face watched dawn ignite the sky and smiled, for she sensed a tale worth telling had only just begun. Ah. Diao. The nights grew longer, though it was late spring by the turning of the master's calendar, and a restless hush settled over King's Landing, as if the city itself held its breath. Lanterns burned low behind shuttered windows. Cats prowled silent gutters, where once the clamor of taverns had echoed until dawn. In the Red Keep's new council hall, the last of the candle stubs guttered out, and Jon Snow sat alone at the high table, parchment strewn like fallen leaves before him. His gaze drifted from line to line without reading. His mind lingered instead on the steady pulse of dragon wings beating somewhere high above. Umbrax hunted at night now, preferring the wide emptiness of stars and cloud, and the city half slept more peacefully knowing its guardian wheeled overhead. Yet Jon understood the bargain he had struck. Comfort for some was dread for others. Where Umbrax's shadow touched cobblestone, a beggar might feel safer from thieves, even as a gilded lord felt exposed. That fragile inversion, empowerment of the weak, anxiety of the entrenched, was the very root of rebellions whispered in cellars from Old Town to Highgarden. Jon dipped a quill, forced himself to read. The page detailed grain reserves from the arbor, enumerating barrels, buyers, and distribution routes. Each line was a promise to feed a belly rather than a ledger balance. Yet negotiating it had taken 3 weeks of barter, compromise, and reminders that a single clutch of bad weather could birth famine. Far easier to threaten with fire than to negotiate tolerances of mildew in oat sacks. But threats alone never thrive through winter. A soft rap on the council chamber door stirred him. He expected a wary sentry bringing security reports. Instead, Arya slipped in, face half-veiled beneath a hood of gray wool. She moved like candle smoke, pulling up a chair opposite without greeting. Only when she tugged the hood back did he notice the flecks of soot on her cheeks. "Fires in Flea Bottom?" Jon asked. She shook her head. "Not Flea Bottom. The Hook. Someone torched warehouses on the riverfront, crates marked for your charter relief." She reached into her sleeve, drew out a small iron sigil stamped on charred oak, a citadel tower wrapped by a ringed candle. "Hightower men. Or those who want the world thinking Hightower men." Jon fingered the sigil's edge. The tower of Old Town's great house had not formally opposed the charter yet, but the citadel's archmaesters lamented lost tariffs, and rumor said the Hightowers' exiled cousins slipped coin to saboteurs. "Casualties? 2 dockhands burned alive," Arya replied. 30 more out of work. The boats unloaded what grain they could and cast off. Captains worried another torch waits. Jon exhaled through his nose. The ink on the Arbor grain agreement was scarcely dry, and already the shipments faltered. He rose to pace, boots thudding on dawn-dull planks. Umbrak's distant roar trembled the windows, and Arya's eyes flicked upward, as though measuring the dragon's mood by its echoes. "We can't answer every spark with dragonfire. They want us to overreach," Jon muttered. "But we can't let them starve the city either." He stopped, turning toward Arya. "Sailors trust you? Could you guide our grain ships by the Straits of Tarth instead of the Mander? Less exposure." "I can," she said. "But the longer route means a fortnight more at sea. And if they know we'll redirect, they'll strike somewhere else. A fish market, a windmill, anywhere the weak will feel it." She leaned forward, voice low. "This isn't sabotage, it's theater. They want the small folk to believe you can't keep them safe unless you burn half the realm, force you to reveal whether you are conqueror or protector." Jon rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Then we show them something else, something no one expects. We show them mercy so visible it blinds. We rebuild the docks ourselves before noon, twice as strong, and feed every man and child in the Hook free bread by nightfall." "Menstanden." Arya's lips curved, approval tinged with mischief. "You'll need more hands than you have royal masons. I have dragons. Dragons cannot raise timbers, but they can turn stone to smooth slab faster than quarrymen can chip." Jon opened a side cabinet and drew a blue-dyed map of the Blackwater's eastern bank. "Umbrax will melt slag for quickset mortar. The City Watch will haul lumber. Tomorrow, the Hook wakes to a grain mill taller than what burned. Then, and more." Arya drummed fingers on the table. "And the saboteurs, we flush them out with coin rather than coffins. Offer a bounty, pardon, and 10 gold dragons for any who come forward naming their paymasters. Let them betray one another. Some crimes deserve steel, not silver." Jon's eyes darkened. "I have swung a sword on heads that deserved it, but each execution carves another ghost into my dreams. If silver can spare a dozen ghosts, I'll pay the price." Arya rose. "I'll make ready. But remember, brother, wolves mend wounds only while their jaws remain sharp." "Dan?" She vanished through the same door, the sigil left atop the papers like a warning. The new dock sprouted in days, its pilings split from blackwood logs ferried down the river that very evening. Jon labored alongside carpenters, bare-armed despite chill wind, hefting beams onto shoulders calloused by far heavier burdens. When Umbrax descended, black wings casting a crescent of shadow wider than the pier, small folk gawked yet held their ground. Children perched on crates cheered as the dragon exhaled a low sheet of flame across rough boulders. Molten stone flowed into molds and cooled near instantly, sealing gaps the tide once gnawed. Jon guided with shouted Balerion phrases half-learned, half-guessed, and Umbrax obeyed, more curious than wearied. By sundown bread ovens, fashioned from the same swift stone, glowed orange. Bakers both free and indentured worked dough, dusted from emergency stores. The smell of fresh loaves drifted through alleys as twilight settled, and folk queued in snaking lines that wound under archways once blackened by the recent fires. Jon remained until the last child received her half-loaf. When he finally climbed onto Umbrax's neck, the crowd parted, and a chant rose. Not of king, but protector, echoing between half-rebuilt walls. From a rooftop vault, Tycho Nestoris of the Iron Bank watched with narrowed eyes. Ledger, tucked under cloak. Loans, he thought, could bind faster than flame. The next morning, ravens from Old Town charged Jon with blasphemy for perverting Dragonflame for base construction, mocking the Seven's gift of honest craft. The scroll bore the High Septon's seal but stank of Hightower quills. Jon read it aloud to Sam, who pinched bridge of nose. If they saw the hunger that Doc's bread quenched, they'd call it miracle, not mockery, Sam grumbled. Jon crushed the scroll, tossed it to the hearth. Let them screech. We answer with open gates and full stomachs. But screeching turned to steel within a fortnight. Reports flooded of field-hand levies marshalling west of Bitterbridge. Bannermen of House Rowan, Fossaway, and discontented Florence gathered behind bright banners stitched hastily at night. They claimed shortages due to charter tithes and dragon-coerced trade. Their ranks swelled with hedge knights who'd lost stipends under the new levied tariffs on tourneys. Anger is cheap coin in lean times. Jon called council. Sansa rode hard from the Riverlands, cloak dusted with road grit. Lord Davos sailed upriver. Brienne of Tarth arrived in polished armor, flanked by volunteers from the Sapphire Isle, willing to shield grain convoys. In the council hall, maps covered tables like ice floes. Colored stones marked rebel positions sliding northward along the Roserad like drops of red ink. They'll reach the Kingswood inside a month, Sansa stated. If they breach the wood, they can starve us by severing each road feeding the capital. Sam coughed politely. The last census counts their host at 6,000. Umbrax could terrify them into surrender without spilling more than the first volley. Now, Brienne shook her head. Terror sows seeds for the next revolt. The Reach is prideful. Burn their fields and they'll plot until roots choke every harvest. She fixed Jon with a steady gaze. Meet them, yes, but meet them on horseback with banners of truce. Remind them you're still flesh, not flame. Jon traced a finger over the Roserad. I'll ride with a small retinue under white banners. Brienne, you'll command the Gold Cloak cohort inside the Kingswood Pass. Visible, not aggressive. If talks fail, your line buys time for Umbrax to shadow them without bloodshed. Now. Sansa's brows lifted at the risk, but she did not argue. She had watched him die once and return. Perhaps she believed fate stubbornly shielded him. Or perhaps she knew that hearts could not be won behind walls. The parley field was a gentle rise of trefoil clover, halfway between Bitterbridge and the Manor, marked only by an abandoned windmill, whose blades drooped like broken wings. Jon approached under a pennon of plain white sewn hastily from a tablecloth. Ghost padded ahead, sniffing flattened grass where horse hooves had churned. Umbrax soared high, a dwindling speck to those on ground, but an ever-present omen to bowstrings. Across a shallow stream, Lord Mathis Rowan awaited. Armor gilded at the edges, though dents revealed true steel beneath. Beside him stood Sir Rolf Foxglove, once sworn sword in service to Highgarden, now self-proclaimed Knight of the True Harvest. Their escort fanned in half-circle behind them. 24 men-at-arms with tabards of green and orange split by crudely painted hourglass symbolizing time, run out under Joan's charter. Jon dismounted, handed reins to Sir Ironbelly, a former pitfighter turned loyal guard whose girth equaled his height. He stepped across the stream barefoot to show he concealed no weapon other than the longsword at his hip. Sheathed in plain leather, Ghost remained at bank, watchful. Lord Rowan, Jon said, nodding. Sir Foxglove. He gestured to the open field. Will you walk? Rowan's gray brows twitched. Walk? On Clover? Aye, why not? He waved off companions, but Foxglove followed, helm tucked under arm. They strolled, where bees drifted from purple blossom to purple blossom. The only audience, a handful of crows, perched on the windmill vane. Rowan cleared his throat. My lands grow barley older than half the castles in Westeros. Yet for all our toil, your charter sets caps that pay less than what my great-grandfather earned a century ago. We do not object to feeding bellies. 7. No, I've taxed my own coffers for soup lines, but you ask us to bear cost alone while outlawing tolls and tithe. My knights have families as well. Nenabamo. Jon slowed, plucking a trefoil leaf. The caps prevent profiteering during scarcity. A lord should feed his people first, not sell grain to Essos for gold. Rowan's jaw tightened. I feed my folk, but they are fewer since war's end. I need coin to replant orchards burned by Lannister raiders. Would you beggar future harvests for present charity? Foxglove interjected. Your dragon scorched soils beside Golden Grove. The ash ruined next season's seed. If you must wield flame, at least pay the blasted damage. Jon faced him. Umbrax has never flown farther west than Stony Sept. If fire struck your fields, seek the arsonist among those who profit by turning you against me. Rowan's gaze flicked sideways at Foxglove. Suspicion dawning. But pride warred with reason. You would have us bow, he said, voice creaking. Trade autonomy for trust in one man and his beast. Not one man, Jon corrected. One charter. It binds me more than it binds you. Any lord may challenge my judgments before council. Dragon or not, the articles rule us alike. A gust stirred the high grass. Above, Umbrax's silhouette passed across the sun. Shrinking, then swelling as he circled. Foxglove's eyes darted skyward. We might strike a bargain, he said quickly. Lower our levy by half this season, restore market tolls on River Mander shipping. Rowan cut him off with an upraised hand. We came to parley, not haggle like fishwives. Answer plainly, Snow. Will you repeal the caps or brace for war? Jon studied the lord's lined face, creases of long seasons under sun, but also the scars of stubbornness. He crouched, pressed trefoil between thumb and forefinger, until dew bled. Lift market tolls on foreign merchants for 1 year, he offered, but grain caps stay. In return, the crown will grant seed loans, interest-free, handled through Maester Wren's ledger. Payback in harvest, not coin, and the crown funds repairs to your mills first. Rowan's brow furrowed. Foxglove opened mouth to protest. Seed loans from king's coffers? Rowan whispered. From my pocket, Jon affirmed. I have gold left from Dragonstow's treasuries. If I spend it on swords, I buy silence for a day. Spend it on seed, I buy bread for a decade. Silence lingered until the windmill clacked. At last, Rowan extended hand. Jon clasped it, palm rough meeting rough. Foxglove hissed through teeth, but said nothing. Revolt without its figurehead collapsed like straw without twine. Jon suspected the knight's purse now lay empty of coin once promised by shadowy patrons. Saboteurs seldom pay when peace is brokered. The Reach host dispersed within a week, trudging home to inspect loan ledgers. But across the narrow sea, news of the failed uprising reached Lies, where golden coins changed hands once more. The Shadow War, it seemed, valued persistence over cost. Meanwhile, the realm's first harvest under charter neared. Jon decreed a grand fair at Harrenhal to celebrate unit, an audacious choice, for the castle's blackened towers still whispered of curses, and its central hearth was large enough to roast an aurochs whole. Yet symbolism mattered. The site once forged by fear would birth fellowship. Lords grumbled about travel, but the promise of open trade stalls seduced even the sternest. Preparations consumed late summer. Pavilions unfurled like bright sails along the god's eye. Artisans from Kuahor hammered stage risers where mummers would perform tales of the long night. Fishermen of salt pans lined wharves with lanterns for a floating feast. Rivermen ferried casks of strong brown ale. Umbrax perched atop Kingspire Tower, vast wings folded, surveying bustle with the aloof grace of a cat amid sparrows. One afternoon, as Jon inspected grain larders repurposed from Harren's labyrinthine storerooms, Sir Davos approached, clutching a sealed letter. Wax bore 3 symbols interlaced: a crescent moon, a smoking volcano, and a lightning bolt. Sigils of Volantis's triarchs. Jon broke seal. The letter, penned in flowing Volantine glyphs translated by Davos, pledged 100 war galleys to the restored Dragon Throne, offering alliance in exchange for exclusive trade privileges on Westerosi coasts. A subtle threat between lines. Accept, or those galleys might sail to rival banners. Jon sighed. Yet another power drawn by scent of transition. Give them no harbor. Sansa advised that night as they walked Harrenhal's moonlit battlements. Alliance with Volantis ensnares us in their slave markets. I know, he said. Though the war galleys could have patrolled the stepstones against pirate raids, chewing merchant convoys. He gazed over lake water glinting silver. We'll rely on our own ships and the Stormlands fleet. Sansa stopped, palm resting on stone scorched by Harren's folly. Each decision you make binds us tighter to the Charter and to you. I see your burdens and feel guilty for letting you carry them alone. Not alone, Jon replied, and pressed her hand. Lights twinkled below, where merchants celebrated early. Laughter drifting like chimes. He wondered if the cursed castle might finally remember joy. The fair opened beneath banners stitched half and half, with each great house's sigil intertwined with others. Kraken twined with rose, wolf with sun and spear, lion with trout. Crowds flocked, filling ruins with color. Musicians from Bravos strummed whisper-steel harps. Dornish dancers spun sabers in swirling sand silk. Armorsmiths displayed helms shaped like seahorse and yawning bear. Even Septons blessed the debauchery, praising unity as the Sevens will. Jon moved among tents without entourage, disguised in cloak of plain brown, ghost padding at heel. He bought honey cakes for orphans, inspected new plow designs, and listened to a Lysine astronomer speak of comets portending rebirth rather than doom. Everywhere he heard Umbrax's name invoked like a saint. Children carved little onyx figurines of dragon and wolf locked in protective embrace. But underneath merriment a note of tension quivered, the knowledge that such peace felt precarious, as though jesters juggling pins might fall any breath. Jon zensed eyes across pavilions, measuring him for weakness. The Iron Bank maintained a modest kiosk, its clerks tallying microloans to smallholders, generosity hiding hooks of interest. And among jugglers he spotted a woman with ash-white hair and violet lenses over brown eyes, her posture too disciplined for streetcraft. He noted positions, reported to Arya, who melted into crowd to track covert spies. That night, Arya returned with 2 daggers and a coded ledger naming payments from VG to DF. But the cipher repeated across earlier sabotage lists, a pattern forming but not yet solved. The next day's climax was to be a ceremonial flight. Umbrax carrying Jon above the fair in sweeping arc, belching flame in harmless rain to dazzle onlookers. Pyromancers from Alchemists' Guild prepared green bursts to ignite mid-air, carefully positioned far from tents. They triple-checked casks of wildfire, each sealed in thick ceramic to prevent accidents. Shortly before dusk, Arya jerked open the door to Jon's temporary solar, eyes flaring. Your pyromancers are dead. Throats slit. Someone tampered with the casks. Jon's breath lodged. How many casks? 4. 2 missing seals, the rest intact. Wildfire unsealed could detonate if jarred or heated. 1 spark could ignite conflagration even dragons feared. Jon buckled sword, raced through corridors. Outside, Umbrax already crouched for takeoff, unaware. Lantern bearers ringed the runway, sparks of flames swirling. He shouted Balerion across the yard. Umbrax paused, head cocked. Jon signaled an emergency dismount. Crew scattered, startled. Arya and Brienne guided laborers to douse lanterns, but the wildfire casks lay stacked near a hay cart 10 paces from Dragon Tower entrance. Jon approached with ghost steps. Faint green fumes seeped where clay cracked. 1 careless tumble would engulf tower and fair. In the gloom he heard scuffle, a cloaked figure hefting 1 compromised cask onto a sling. Jon drew dagger, advanced. The figure turned. Ash-white hair wig slipped to reveal cropped brown beneath. The juggler. She flung a vial at Jon's feet. Purple smoke erupted. Jon held breath, plunged forward, shoved her aside. The cask teetered. Ghost lunged, jaws clamping cloak, anchoring her. Jon zeiced the cask, steadied it against chest, though heat leaked, singeing tunic. Brienne charged, shield raised, knocking assassin senseless. Together they eased cask onto sand, shoveling soil to smother cracks. Maesters rushed with hammered lead patches, sealing fissures while chanting prayers. When smoke cleared, Jon's arms blistered crimson. His tunic smoldered. Yet the casks stood inert. Crisis averted, though by hair's breadth. Umbrax roared overhead, distressed by scent of wildfire. Jon climbed his neck, letting the dragon see him safe. He addressed the unsettled crowd from saddle, confessed sabotage, praised vigilance, and declared the flight postponed to ensure safety. His honesty birthed deeper trust. Cheers rose louder than any pyrotechnic. But wrath simmered inside him. He interrogated the captured saboteur before dawn. She named payment from Verona Hastings, a Braavosi envoy rumored to front Iron Bank Black Ops, but insisted she answered to a masked woman who bore the Titan of Braavos tattoo on her palm. The pieces aligned. The Iron Bank had financed uprisings to press privileged loans. Failing that, they now sought to brand Jon reckless by wildfire tragedy. Davos confirmed the bank's growing impatience. 15 million gold dragons in pre-charter debts were frozen by new taxation caps. The bank's threat lay not in swords but credit lines that greased shipyards and winter stores. Jon convened urgent council. "We cannot slay a bank with dragonfire," he said. "We need leverage stronger than coin." Sansa proposed embargo of Braavosi goods. Davos countered. Braavos would answer with privateers cutting Westerosi shipping. Sam suggested contacting the Sea Lord to bypass Iron Bank prigs. Brienne favored seizing bank assets ashore. Grain silos, counting houses. Jon listened until voices frayed. At last he spoke. "The bank values certainty. Let's offer them risk they cannot calculate." He outlined plan. Restructure Realm's debts into single bond. Backed by Dragonfire insurance, the Charter Council would guarantee repayment via incremental tariffs on luxury imports. If bank sabotaged Charter, tariff ceased, bond defaulting, and Iron Bank's clients across world lose trust. A dangerous bluff. Default could strangle Realm for decades. But risk cut both ways. The bank's power thrived on reputation of inevitable repayment. A realm whose figurehead dragon could incinerate default collectors tested that assumption in ways ledgers ignored. Davos smirked. "A smuggler's gambit. I like it." They drafted edict within hours, dispatching Raven to Braavostot. Response arrived fortnight later. A terse parchment accepting terms under clause that Umbrax never flies within 100 yards of bank property. Jon signed. Arya asked later whether he feared such brinkmanship. Every hour, he admitted. But fear sharpened resolves. Wars seldom resolve. Autumn's first frost etched pale lace across Harrenhal's repaired courtyard. Jon walked between rows of young oaks, newly planted to break the monotony of melted towers. Umbrax basked in early sun, wings rustling to gather heat. Sam approached, holding a weather-stained journal. "I think I found your VH," he said. Months ago, a triarch of Volantis, Valasso Hastorian, petitioned Iron Bank for loan to build Scorpion Fleet. Initials matched the ledger Arya seized. The bank denied him, but he may have allied with Hightower cousins thereafter. Jon nodded slowly. Volantis offered war galleys. We refused. Now they underwrite sabotage, and they'll keep trying. Ghost snorted, as though agreeing. Jon exhaled. Then we will keep building. The stronger the charter grows, the less oxygen for their fires. It may take your whole life, Sam warned. A life is a fair price for a realm of peace. He rubbed Ghost's ears, glancing at Umbrax. And if I fail, perhaps the next protector shall wield words better still. That evening, torches lit pathways between tents for final night of the fair. Musicians plucked gentle chords. Jon sat beside Sansa on a stone bench gilded by lamplight. She sipped spiced wine, gaze lost among dancers swirling autumn-hued shawls. "Do you ever miss the quiet of Winterfell?" she asked. "Every dawn," he said. "But Winterfell taught me to guard fires through longest nights. This realm is our hearth now." "Oh," she smiled sadly. "Then I'll stoke it beside you." Overhead, a streak of silver shot across sky. A falling star. Crowd gasped, pointing. Some whispered it a blessing from the seven. Others claimed omen of dragons multiplied. Jon watched the star's tail fade. He remembered the comet that once heralded Daenerys dragons over the Red Waste, and he wondered whether this star signaled next chapter. A realm forged not by one protector, but by many hearts entwined. The drums quickened. Umbrax beat wings, rising to trace the star's fading arc. His roar thundered over Harrenhal, not of threat but promise, a vow that shadow and flame could guard cradle of fragile hope. Jon rose, extending a hand to Sansa. She took it, and together they stepped into the lantern-lit circle, where small folk danced, merging wolf and dragon in humble revel. No crown gleamed on his brow, no titles hailed. Yet in that moment the realm's charter breathed as a living thing, and the specter of conquest yielded to chorus of shared melody. But beyond torch glow, in forests skirting the god's eye, riders in black cloaks gathered beneath trembling birches. Their leader, a woman with iron hair and a scarred left eye, unrolled a parchment etched with sigils of kraken and flaming heart bound together. She whispered to confidence, "The pact of wolf and dragon weakens our claims. We strike Forge Valley first, then Duskendale. Cut supply routes, starve the capital, watch the charter crumble." The conspirators extinguished campfires and melted into darkness, unaware that a silent stalker shadowed them. Arya, face painted with mud, eyes reflecting moon. She slipped away to warn her brother. Sparks of another conflict already lighting horizon. "Impermanence is realm's only certainty," Jon would muse later. Yet impermanence also seeds chance for renewal. And as winter winds swept across God's eye that night, howling through gaps in Harrenhal's mighty towers, the seeds of renewal held fast within each stone, nourished by dragon's warmth, wolf's loyalty, and the brittle resilience of mortal hearts striving toward dawn. Days bled into months. Snowflakes arrived early, though the Dornish sun still baked sands far south. Jon divided time between capital and countryside, ensuring bonds of charter remained more than ink. In Crackclaw Point he knelt beside fisherwives mending nets, promising repairs to jetties smashed by last storm. In the Vale, he rode mountain trails with young Lady Robin, coaxing him to open grain stores to migrant shepherds. Umbrax accompanied each tour, sometimes aloft, sometimes curled like obsidian hillock near village greens, where children dared sneak closer to stroke shimmering scales. One gray afternoon, as they camped beneath weather-gnarled oaks north of Maidenpool, Sam stumbled upon ruins of a sept charred in early wars. Amid cracked flagstones he unearthed a half-melted crown of pewter and tin, one of many false crowns minted during the War of Five Kings. Sam brushed soot away, turning it in hands. "Once, every lord fancied a crown," he said, "until crowns meant weight they could not shoulder." Jon studied twisted metal. "Crowns break easier than hearts. Best leave it buried." He replaced it beneath new stones, a silent cairn to vanity. Above, Umbrax loosed a mournful cry, answering some invisible call echoing across moor. Winter's first blizzard engulfed the King's Road, as Jon returned for Long Night Festival, a holiday newly decreed to commemorate victory over darkness and celebrate unity. White hung heavy on black branches, Umbrax's flame carved tunnels through drifts so supply wagons could push south. Villagers lined roadbeds cheering, offering warm cider to passing riders. Even amid snowfall, optimism burned like hearth coals. Yet in the far north, beyond walls' broken ramparts, watchers of the haunted forest whispered of shadows shifting. Dead things stirred again, not in legions but scattered wights haunting icy gullies. Tormund Giantsbane, newly styled lord of the free folk village of Hardhome, dispatched Raven to Jon. Signs of necromancy from cannibal clan, long thought vanished. Jon felt old dread tighten around spine. He prepared relief supplies for Ghost to carry as outrider north, but Sansa counseled caution. You are protector of realm now. Ride north and saboteurs strike south. Jon wrestled with duty to kingdom versus vow to free folk. At last he ordered the Ravensgate Accord, a cadre of rangers under Sir Jeremy Riker, to join free folk patrols. Supplies funded through charters, Northern Relief Clause. Umbrax would fly one circuit each moon over Skirling Pass to remind any necromancer that flame still guarded. Even as threats shifted north, southern conspiracies simmered. The Scorpion fleet of Volantine Triarch Valasso, launched under guise of anti-pirate crusade, lurking near stepstones. Ironborn reavers, financed by Old Harlaw gold, raided Tarth's shipping lanes. And in Duskendale, Kraken banners appeared beside red hearts aflame. Sigil of Lady Asha Greyjoy, partnering with Lady Melara Baratheon, renegade daughter of King Stannis' late younger brother, who believed storms and tide would sweep away Charter's restraint. Jon stood before council maps again. New lines, new fires. War beckoned like siren song. He closed weary eyes, whispered, "No conqueror's crown," then reopened them with hardened resolve. Mercy's strength must include spine of steel. He summoned Brienne, Gendry, Davos, Arya, Sam, and Maester delegations. They divided tasks. Davos to broker with Asha, offering amnesty for raids if Ironborn escort grain convoys. Gendry to craft ship-mounted swivel scorpion resisting seaborne ballistae. Brienne to train town militias in shield wall that counters Kraken raiders. Arya to infiltrate Volantine flagship. And Jon? He would ride east of King's Road, where conspirators massed. Before leaving, he visited Umbrax and Dragon Pit. The mighty beast, now dwarfed brick arches, once meant for Balerion. Masons worked nightly to expand enclosure. Umbrax nuzzled Jon's palm, smelling sea salt and parchment ink. Jon spoke softly. "You were born in fire I thought would devour me. Instead you tempered me." He rested forehead against obsidian brow. "We may burn again before dawn, but let us burn bright enough for hope to find its way." Umbrax's chest vibrated, deep rumble akin to mountains shifting. Jon mounted. Beating wings stirred straw and dust, lifting into moonlit sky. From ramparts Sansa watched until they vanished beyond walls. Snow swirling in slipstream. She whispered, "Guide him true." Though she knew not if she prayed to old gods, new, or the dragon itself. The campaign east unfolded like a tapestry woven of wind and hazard. Jon's host small, 800 northern spears, 500 crownlands archers, 300 reach carpenters turned sapper corps, marched light, relying on supply wagons shielded by Ironborn newly allied through Davis Silvertongue. Each night they fortified camp with dragon-fired earthworks that hardened to glassy ramparts by dawn. Near Antler's castle, they met first resistance. Sellsword Company Pale Wings. Flying banner of ivory owl, clutching dagger. Their commander, Sir Gerald Linwater, demanded toll in golden grain to pass. Jon answered with charter edict. Free passage for relief caravans. Linwater laughed. Until Umbrax descended, claws raking empty air behind him. Not a single flame was loosed, yet 50 Sellswords dropped weapons, eyes rolling white. The company bent knee, drafting contract to serve charter in exchange for pardon. Jon paid them half wages up front, sending them to rebuild burned villages they once harried. Mercy entwined with firmness. Word of it rushed ahead, taming roadblocks before they formed. But Lady Melara Baratheon's insurgents proved fiercer. They fortified an abandoned ruin overlooking Duskendale's coastal inlet. Scorpions fashioned from old Storm's end siege rigs. Jon surveyed at dawn from ridge, while Umbrax hovered distant to avoid arrow range. Snow-dusted parapets. Within, banners of stag and kraken interlaced. He sent envoy, proud knight of the Hollow Hill, Sir Edric Dane, bearing scroll of amnesty. Days passed. No reply but scorpion bolt, impaled in envoy banner. Jon steeled himself for assault. Night before attack, Arya returned from scouting. Only 200 defenders inside, but dozens of barrels lining walls bore crude glyphs of Cinderheart, wildfire stolen through Volantene intermediaries. They intended to ignite fortress if dragon approached, sacrifice themselves to paint Jon blood-guilty before realm. Jon called war council under frosted reef of pine. Sappers suggested tunnels. Archers recommended torch arrow barrage to pre-detonate barrels. Jon rejected both. We can't risk firestorm. Villagers below would burn. He resolved on gambit. He would ride alone to parley at gate at dawn, no dragon overhead. If defenders ignited wildfire, they could not blame dragon. If they surrendered, crisis solved. Council protested. He held. At first light he trudged toward gate under white flag, snow crunching. Ghost slunk behind tree line. Scorpions creaked on ramparts. Lady Melara herself appeared, storm yellow cloak snapping. Tiara of antlers trimmed to jagged horns. "You court death, bastard of winter," she called. "A man who brings dragon to heel is still nothing but Scales' errand boy." Jon stopped within arrow shot. "You fight ghosts of your father's torment," he said. "End blood before it begins anew. The charter grants high seat in Duskendale, trade to your ports, and free worship of Lord of Light if you renounce Kraken Pact." She laughed, wind whipping dark hair. "Your charter neuters nobility, turns lions into lapdogs. I'd rather burn." "None." She raised hand. Archers knocked flaming arrows, aimed at wildfire barrels near gate. Jon met her eyes unflinching. "Burn and you prove charter's worth, fewer tyrants to face." He spread arms. "But spare your people, and I swear on Dragonflame that Stormlands will flourish." For heartbeat no one moved. Snowflake settled on arrow tip. Then, from parapet rear, a young man stepped forward. Melara's cousin Sir Glyndon. "Enough," he shouted. He shoved barrel from battlement. It crashed outside wall, green ooze hissing in snow. Other youths followed, rolling barrels into moat where cold quenched volatile hearts. Melara turned, enraged. Glyndon seized her arm. "We are Baratheon, not Mad Kings," he said. "We protect Stormborn, not immolate them." She wrenched away. Jon nodded to Ghost, who emerged, white specter of North. Confusion rippled defenders. The Hound of Winter among them, spooked more than dragon they could not see. Melara's shoulders sagged. She flung torch aside, sparks lost in snow. Gate creaked open. Jon accepted her sword, offered it back hilt first. "Keep it to wield honor, not spite." She stared, then took blade slowly. Tears filmed eyes. "My father died for duty twisted by flames. I feared your dragon would burn world as hers did." Jon's voice softened. "Dragons obey hearts that ride them. Let ours be steady." Defenders filed out, escorted to separate camp where healers gave hot broth. Wildfire seeped harmless in moat, until sappers neutralized with smothering sand. Council convened inside fortress. Jon installed Glyndon as steward until charter confirmed Melara's penitent role. That night, Umbrax finally settled atop fortress tower, breathing gentle flame to melt ice on parapets. Villagers gathered below cheered, seeing salvation rather than doom. Months crawled. Winter hammered realm, but trade caravans remained moving along roads Jon's forces secured. Meanwhile, word came from north. Hardhome raids quelled by rangers and free folk, necromancer slain. A fisherling seer turned mad after communing with ice wights. Peace, though threadbare, held. In capital, Sam oversaw assembly of charter codex, illuminated manuscripts bound in blue leather, delivered to every holdfast. Sansa formed Order of the Hearth. Traveling judges to settle disputes by charter articles, robed in gray and white like ash and snow. Brienne trained them to deflect blades. Arya taught unseen steps to evade ambushes. Volantis' fleet continued menace. But Gendry's swivel scorpions on Stormland's galleys deterred raids. When 3 Volantene ships seized Gullegg merchant vessel under Westerosi license, Umbrax answered, wings blotting midday sun above their decks. The galleys turned in terror without arrow loosed. Thereafter, Triarch Velasco sued for trade corridor meeting. Hope began to feel less fragile, though Jon kept armor close. 3 years after the first hatch, Realm gathered again. This time at River Run, to witness forging of Nightglass Concord. Pact among Charter, Iron Bank, and Free Cities guilds ensuring fair trade and renouncing sabotage. Jon arrived late, cloak dusted with frost, but cheers rose as he crossed Tully Drawbridge beside Umbrax's pacing riverbank. Night of signing, Lord Rowan approached Jon with sealed bottle of his finest apple brandy. "You rebuilt what I feared lost," he said, clinking glass. "Forgive stubbornness." Jon smiled. Stubborn roots hold soil when storms come. They drank under lantern scaffolds while minstrels sang Ballad of Wolf King and Shadowflame, verses weaving caution and courage. Umbrax's silhouette reflected on water, merging with starlight. After festivities, Jon slipped away to stand on outer parapet. The air crisp, smelling of whetstone and distant smoke. Steps sounded. Arya appeared, eyes glinting like moon on steel. Spies say Volantis recalls Scorpion Fleet. She reported, "No more coin for sabotage. Even Iron Bank invests in your seed loan program now." Jon raised brow. Trust founded on profit, still trust of sort. Arya shrugged, gazed skyward. What next? Crown? He shook head. Let council lead. I've done what I can. Someday another will ride Umbrax. My role will be memory. He watched snow swirl beyond torchlight. But there are still embers of rebellion. Always will be, she said, stepping to edge. Important thing is to keep fires small. Jon considered. I may ride north again. Rebuild castles of the Night's Watch. Not for war, but as beacons of study. Let maesters and rangers document magic while it sleeps. Arya smirked. You were always happiest under stars with wind and hair. What of you? He asked. I'll keep walking paths where laws can't reach. So they stay small. She touched his shoulder. If you need me, send Ghost inside a wolf, and I'll come. He laughed softly. Ghost hates ravens. She melted back into shadows. Jon lingered, listening to river lap walls. Inside hall after sword. Outside, world felt wide and open. Umbrax appeared above parapet, landing with gust of wind. Jon stroked muzzle. Time to fly, he whispered. They launched into night. River Run lights dwindled beneath. High above, realm sprawled. Rivers like ribbons, forests dark seas, villages starry clusters. Jon breathed cold air, heart steady. Below, scattered campfires dotted fields. Not armies, but families warming under one sky. Umbrax roared, exhaling flame that carved brief path of light among stars, as if writing silent promise. So long as hearts seek balance, dragon and man will guard, not conquer. And across realm, men and women stirred from sleep, feeling warmth flicker through winter night, not knowing why but believing dawn would come kinder than before. Snow streamed across the night sky in gusty veils, each flake catching moonlight like motes of silver ash, before vanishing into the yawning dark. High above the riverlands, Umbrax carved soundless paths between clouds, his shadow eclipsing constellations as he banked northward. Jon pressed himself low against the dragon's neck. Fingers splayed across ridged scales still warm from embers coursing beneath. The wind roared past his ears, but in its furious howl he sensed a hush. The hush of a realm not at war but at watch, wary of the next rumor, the next whisper, the next crack in fragile peace. He had given them bread, roads, and a charter. What he could not give was quiet forever. Ghost loped far below, a pale wraith hugging tree lines that striped the plains like charcoal strokes. Every so often the dire wolf paused, nose lifted to the wind, verifying that the scent of his rider still laced the air. Jon trusted Ghost to find him wherever he landed. They shared a tether older than any crown or charter. He guided Umbrax lower as dawn bled up the horizon, staining snowbanks in the distance faint rose. The first settlement came into view, a small holdfast perched beside a bend in the Red Fork, palisade half buried in drifting snow. Lanterns glittered from arrow slits, sentinels greeting dawn. John directed Umbrax to circle once at high altitude, a silent promise of vigilance, then urged him onward. By full sunrise, they approached Maidenpool's outskirts. The harbor, ringed by new docks, bustled despite winter's clutch. Gendry had installed swivel scorpions on merchant galleys here first, and their bronze arms gleamed under new snow. Sailors paused mid-haul to wave or bow as Umbrax's shadow swept over their decks, at once grateful and guarded. John recognized respect, forged by shared labor rather than blind fear. He dipped the dragon's wing in salute and continued north. His purpose lay beyond the neck this time. The ravens from Lord Tormund's steading warned of unnatural lights on the frozen horizon, dim auroras pulsing out of season, breathed into life by some working of ice blight that had tested the free folk. John intended to learn whether necromancy stirred or if mere superstition cooked in long winter nights. Either way, he would walk that darkness himself. He owed it to every soul whose hopes fermented under his vow. When the King's Road narrowed toward Moat Cailin, John coaxed Umbrax to land on a snowy ridge overlooking the swamplands below. Wing beats sent powdered snow swirling into eddies that sparkled like crushed glass. The dragon settled, folding wings tight, and exhaled a plume of steam as John climbed down. He let his legs remember earth, boots sinking ankle deep, before loosening Umbrax's harness so the beast could stretch or hunt. Ghost emerged from a thicket moments later, muzzle dusted white, pale eyes bright with shared purpose. John knelt, touching his brow to the direwolf's. "Guard him," he murmured. Ghost's tail swept once in agreement. John donned a hood of wolf fur lined with padded mail and slogged toward the ruins, razor fragments of ancient basalt jutting through snow like dragon teeth. The neck had always been treacherous ground, yet he had traveled it enough times to find footing on its narrow, firmer trails. The sun hung low by the time he reached the half-frozen causeway, marking northern soil. There, a band of Crannogmen emerged between cattail clusters, arrows nocked but pointed downward. Their leader, a wiry woman with reed-woven armor, offered a terse nod. "Lord Snow," she greeted. "We heard wings on the wind. You seek passage?" "Safe passage, if the causeway still belongs to Howland's kin," John said. "Always will," she replied. "Nemera Reed, my father instructed us to guide you." She gestured to her silent hunters. They melted back into reeds, leaving only faint ripples behind. John followed Nemera along a path wound between frozen pools that cracked under their weight. She spoke little, but each word was precise. "Free folk report lights near Skirling Pass," she said. "Some say whites. Some say witch fire." She eyed him sidelong. "Do you believe the dead stir again?" John considered. Belief matters less than readiness. If shadows rise, the watch must meet them. "The watch is ghosts and children," she said. "Southron lords will not send sons to guard it, dragon or no." John's breath puffed. "Then I'll send mine." He envisioned charters drafting ranger exchanges, each holdfast sending 2 volunteers yearly, rotated to watch posts, doubling as research towers. Knowledge and vigilance, not endless garrisons, might restrain the North's raw dread. Nemera's keen gaze seemed to pluck that thought from him. "You build more than walls," she observed. "Walls crack, teaching endures." She nodded, as if satisfied. They camped that night on an island of moss-ringed stone, reed huts standing vacant, a seasonal fishing post. While Nemera's hunters laid nets for eels beneath ice, John warmed his hands by a fire of driftwood. Sparks shot skyward to vanish in the snow swirl. He reached into satchel for Sam's latest pages. A treatise on pre-Andal barrows north of Long Lake, theorizing that their stone inscriptions held references to ancient sigils resembling weirwood glyphs. Patterns, Sam argued, linking rituals of protection to early forms of Pactum Draconis. John traced a finger across Sam's meticulous script, feeling faint hum of fate weaving lines across centuries like invisible thread. When dawn burned peach and lavender, they resumed. By afternoon, John crested the last marsh ridge and beheld the wall's remnants. Where once a monolith of ice reared, now jagged pillars jutted in uneven shards, the breach from Viserion's tears still a ragged scar. Yet new watchtowers rose, timber-laced stone, humble but defiant. Ranger banners snapped in the wind, black fabric overlaid by the charter's pale wolf and dragon emblem. At Castle Black, he found Sir Jeremy Riker directing masons. Children of free folk passed buckets of mortar formed from crushed stone fused by Umbrax's practice flame on earlier sorties. Jon dismounted beyond shattered gate beams. Riker turned, surprise flickering. "Lord Protector," he greeted, offering braced forearm. "You ride faster than ravens." "Wings help," Jon said dryly. He surveyed progress. Where men once shivered in crumbling halls, new roofs sheltered cots, and smoke curled from chimneys buried in snowdrifts. But weariness pinched cheeks beneath soot, and the smell of thin cabbage broth hinted at stretched stores. "How stands the watch?" Jon asked. "Smaller each moon," Riker admitted. "Yet the free folk keep their pledges. 5 volunteers every quarter. Southern volunteers fewer, but we train what we have." "Men sell." Jon strode to parapet overlooking the haunted forest's fringe. "Reports of lights?" Lord Protector." Riker pointed to distant peaks. "Greenish glow flickers some nights. No large white band spotted. But we lost 2 rangers to frost after glimpsing a white elk with a blue fire mantle. Their bodies were drained of warmth, no wound." Jon's jaw tightened. "Could be an ice spell creature. Remnants of others' magic. We're sharpening dragonglass regardless." Jon nodded. "I'll ride north with a small team to confirm. Meanwhile, stretch stores. Grain convoy leaves Molestown tomorrow." "Dender." Riker blew out a breath of relief. "If Umbrax hunts, we'll feed boneyards of deer to the beast." "The beast shares," Jon said with faint smile. He spent rest of the day inspecting new tunnels reinforcing the wall's base. Free folk children scampered after him, wide-eyed, until he knelt to show them the polished dragonglass dagger at his hip. He pressed the handle into a boy's palm. "Stone that kills shadows," he said. "But words kill fear first." He let the lad keep it. Riker raised a brow, but Jon shrugged. Better a child learns its weight early. That night, he met Tormund in the mess hall. The hulking wildling lord smelled of pine tar and mead, laughter booming as he crushed Jon in a bear hug. "Crow King walks again," he bellowed, sloshing ale across benches. They spoke long. Voices hushed once others drifted off. Tormund's face sobered. "Dead things stir, not armies but scouts of cold. I've seen their prints, no toes, just imprints like coins hammered in snow. They sniff for cracks. If a crack appears, they'll spill through." Jon emptied his cup, set it down. "We close cracks with light. And a dragon." "Then sorrow." Tormund scratched beard. "Dragon, good at warming bones." A grin cracked a solemn mask. "But take care not to scorch sky. Free folk like stars too." Jon clasped forearms. "We ride at first light. You'll guide?" The wildling's grin widened. "Always." "Oh." The trek through shivering forest lasted 5 days under lavender twilight that never quite surrendered to full dark. Umbrax shadowed overhead, glimpsed through branches heavy with hoarfrost so thick they clinked like glass against each other when wind gusted. The party, Tormund, Nymera, 3 seasoned rangers and 2 free folk huntswomen, advanced on webs of snowshoe tracks, pausing often to test air's strange hush. On the 4th dusk, they reached a valley where snow glowed faintly teal. It lay not frosting starlight, but reflecting pulses from an aperture of ice halfway up a ridge. Within that cavern mouth, a slow, rhythmic shimmer emanated. Heart lantern of some unknown craft. Jon signaled halt. They crouched behind rocks dusted blue by the glow. Umbrax settled on ridge opposite, talons cracking ice crust. The dragon growled low, echo fluttering. Jon slithered forward, ghost flanking. He glimpsed figures inside. 5 whites perhaps, but unlike ones he'd seen. Their flesh wrapped in crystalline sheaths, eyes seared white rather than blue. Their arms moved in unison around a crystal obelisk half Jon's height, facets glowing with that same seething teal, pulsing slower than a heartbeat. Ricker whispered. "What is that?" "Heartstone," Nimra murmured, expression grim. "Cranog legend. Ice priests once shaped such stones to hold winter spirits." Jon studied the whites. They did not wander aimless. They were attendants. "The obelisk likely calls to others. We destroy it." He half-turned toward Umbrax, raising a gloved fist in prearranged signal. The dragon's eyes flared as he inhaled. "Wait." Tormund grunted. He indicated the frozen slope. Tiny figures clutched war horns carved of mammoth bone. Free folk watchers. They aimed not at Jon, but at the whites. "My kin?" "Some followed us," Tormund muttered. "Thought to prove themselves monster-slaying heroes. Too near. One flare of dragonfire risked incinerating both sides." Jon pivoted, unsheathed Longclaw, blade shimmering pallid in turquoise glow. Ghost bounded forward, silent as falling ash. The rangers loosed arrows tipped with dragonglass. Shafts whistled, each finding mark. 2 whites collapsed, bodies shattering into shards that melted like snow drawn to summer sun. The remaining twisted, emitting high shrieking tone. The obelisk brightened, pulse accelerating. Umbrax launched from ridge, sword over. But Jon thrust hand up, signaling hold. He couldn't trust collateral flame. He charged instead, boots pounding crusty snow. Longclaw's Balerion edge bit through crystal armor of a third white, cleaving skull clean. The fourth swung a jagged ice axe. Jon ducked, slammed pommel into brittle jaw, then pivoted as Ghost leapt, tearing throat. The final attendant knelt behind the obelisk, palms pressed to facets. Light flared, projecting mote-like sparks. Jon hurled dagger. Blade struck shoulder, but not before a humming bolt shot skyward, trailing green flames. The beacon. Umbrax's wings thundered overhead, tail smashing into last white, sending it splintering into fragments. But attention shifted skyward. North horizon glimmered with new lights. Ribbons of emerald lace twisting like serpents. "They're signaling," Ricker gasped. "Calling more dead?" Jon planted Longclaw tip, panting. "Not dead. Something else." He studied the obelisk, now dormant, glow fading to dull frost. He knelt, pressed gauntlet to one facet. Chill knifed his palm. Patterns etched across surface resembled weirwood glyphs Sam had drawn. Ice mirror, of old magic. Nimera reached into pouch, withdrew pouch of powdered dragonglass, and sprinkled over stone. The dust sparked, laced cracks across entire pillar. Jon stepped back, raised blade in salute to Umbrax. The dragon exhaled a focused tongue of flame. Hotter than forge, yet narrow as lance. Fire met ice. Steam geysered with hiss like thousand serpents dying. When mist cleared, obelisk lay ruin, dark. But the sky's ribbon lights danced still, summoned. Jon felt hair rise on arms. "We must warn the realm." Tormund scowled. "Realm far, night close. We hold pass until realm ready." Jon turned to Umbrax. "Fetch firewood," he said half to himself. He carved trenches in snow, instructing rangers to place dragonglass stakes, sharpened both ends. The free folk watchers joined swiftly after realizing Charter's Wolf King led the charge. They built 2 rings of defenses around cave mouth. Umbrax melted moats in outer ring, filling with water that froze to slick ice. If new whites approached, they'd break ankles or slide into impaled stakes. Night dropped full, an oppressive hush, broken only by occasional crack of settling ice. Stars hid behind swirling aurora curtains, tinted lurid green. The watchers huddled close to banked fires, staring toward forest with weapons drawn. Past midnight, Jon's breath caught as the first shape emerged. Not white, but a towering elk of pure white. Antlers combed with frost strands. Eyes blank but pulsing azure. It stepped onto ice moat. Hooves found no purchase, yet it glided inches above surface, ethereal. With each step, rime grew behind it as if freezing time itself. Behind elk followed figures draped in robes of hoarfrost, faces concealed by porcelain masks depicting sorrowful moons. Their hands held no blades, only staffs woven of living ice. The party numbered 13, wholly for the old watchers who counted nights. Jon stepped forward, long claw angled downward, a posture of caution, not attack. The lead figure halted at moat's edge, raising palm. The air crackled and a bridge of crystal blossomed across water. Tormund drew axe. "No speak, we cut," he muttered. Jon lifted hand. "Wait." The figure's mask angled to him. Its staff tip glimmered, projecting shapes in faint light. Circular glyphs, identical to those on shattered obelisk, but flickering scarlet through icy blue. Nimra inhaled sharply. "They request parley," she whispered. Jon sheathed sword slowly, stepping onto bridge. Frost nipped boot soles instantly, but he advanced until he stood a spear's length away. The masked leader spoke then. Sound like sleet hitting steel, yet forming words of ancient tongue Jon barely recognized from Sam's scrolls. Proto-First Men dialect fused with Balerion inflections. "Guardian of Flame," it pronounced. "We seek concord, not war." Jon answered in common. "You conjure whites." "Slain watchers have no warmth because of your magic." The figure inclined head. "We salvage lifelight. Whites you name them, corpses borrowed, freed from decay, bound to guide Heartfire stone, necessary to mend breach between winters." "Nidin." Jon's brow furrowed. "You gather souls?" "Echoes," it corrected. "Shadows of dead. They are coin we spend to seal rift others ripped by dragonfrost and thunderflame." Jon considered. Viserion's blue fire and subsequent battles left fractures in arcane firmament north. Perhaps these beings, ice priests, sought to mend it their own way. "Your echo stole warmth, killed men." "Unintended sorrow," the priest said. "Imperfection, a vessel. We remedy. Aid us." "Benda one see." "Aid how?" It touched staff to ice. Illusions formed. Schematics of great lattice spanning fissures beyond Frostfangs, powered by Heartfire pillars. At intersection lay symbol merging flame and snow. The priests lacked flame of life. Dragons lacked cold of night. Together, equilibrium. Jon realized they requested Dragonflame to temper Heartfire forging. "You want Umbrax's breath." "Measured breath. Fusion of opposites births quiet night, not endless." Jon glanced back at defenders. If this alliance prevented return of others, might be worth risk. "No forced binding," he said. "No harm to living. Pledge, sealed." The priest extended hand gloved in frost that didn't melt despite warmth of campfires. Jon removed gauntlet, placed calloused palm against frosted fingers. Cold knifed skin, yet behind it he felt heartbeat echo. Not of one being, but many, like distant drums in cavern. They pulsed slower than human hearts, reminiscent of glaciers grinding mountain roots. A fissure of light crawled over handshake, then dissipated. The priest withdrew. "We depart at dawn when moon dies. Dragons flame at valley's mouth." One breath. "Then watchers safe." Jon nodded. At pre-dawn hush, Umbrax expelled a plume of controlled fire across 5 new obelisks, arranged by ice priests. Blue flames shimmered as heat licked crystal, but priests' staffs channeled energy, weaving lines of frost into flame until pillars glowed violet. When last flicker settled, a low hum thrummed through earth, like giant harp string plucked deep underground. The priests bowed to Jon, then dissolved into snowburst carried by wind. Jon stood silent until hum faded. Nothing attacked. Nothing howled. A peace like crisp still air after forging swept valley. Tormund slapped Jon's shoulder. "Well, Crow King, you made friend of frost wraiths. Buy them mead next." Jon exhaled white plume. "If they drink." He turned to Ricker. "We record this for maesters." Nimra smiled faintly. "Old magic, new accord. Realm stronger." Jon watched the pillars until sun crested, rays turning them to glass spires radiating gentle warmth despite ice. Balance, he thought. Maybe this world craved not victory of flame or frost, but the handshake of both. Weeks later Jon returned south, Umbrax carrying him across an azure sky crisp with winter clarity. At Maidenpool, He met ravens bearing urgent seals. In King's Landing, a coalition of minor lords had petitioned to elevate charter beyond Protector's oversight, arguing governance should rest in council alone now that stability matured. Sansa requested his presence but assured she supported their motion, believing power's diffusion healthy. Jon smiled. His vow to disappear into memory came sooner than expected. He reached capital by dusk, landing in Dragon Pit, where Umbrax gutted a stag in 2 bites before curling to sleep. Jon strode toward Red Keep. No longer a keep, but a network of restored courts and archive halls. Snow fell heavier south than usual. The city glimmered under soft white mantle. Inside Council Hall, he found lords seated around round mahogany table. Sansa presided, wearing gown quilted with white direwolves chasing black dragons. Symbolism subtle but poignant. She stood as Jon entered, gesture for quiet. Protector Snow. She began, voice ringing. The council moves to ratify Article 33. Transition of executive powers from singular protector to elected triune. 3 chosen by assemblies of lords, smallfolk, and maesters every 5 years. Murmurs rippled. Jon surveyed faces, nervous, hopeful. He recognized opportunity to lighten burdens, yet triunes risked gridlock. He spoke measured. If stability rests on one rider, realm topples when rider falls. I welcome succession of will, but ensure triune's deeds remain bound by same oath I swore. Protect weak, temper strong, guard balance. Swear it before wolf, dragon, and hearth. Sansa produced silver chalice etched with new crest. One by one delegates approached, dripped blood from thumb into spiced wine. Symbol of shared sacrifice. Then drank. Jon last. He sliced palm over chalice, let crimson swirl, then drank, wincing at heat. By night's end article ratified. Cheers erupted. Some wept. Fear eased. Jon hugged Sansa. You'll be first triune seat, he whispered. She smirked. If realm votes me, campaigns begin tomorrow. Don't bribe them with lemon cakes, he teased. She punched his arm lightly. Only elderberry wine. Winter's last moon waned. Jon prepared to relinquish title. Papers signed, regalia stored. Simple steel circlet locked in armory. He spent final week visiting smallfolk. Smithies, hospitals rebuilt with charter coin. At orphanage near Street of Flower, he read tales of Nymeria's voyage to children, huddled in blankets. They demanded story of Wolf King and Shadowflame. He obliged, voice catching when describing handshake in Ice Valley. On final evening before ceremony, Jon climbed Tower of Hand roof to reflect. Umbrax perched nearby, wings rustling. Below, city lights glimmered like spilled stars. Ghost padded up, pressing muzzle to Jon's side. He spoke to both. I step aside, but we remain guardians. Umbrax huffed warm breath. Ghost's tail wagged gently. Dawn-painted spires rose gold. Bells rang across rooftops. Train inauguration unfolded in great courtyard, where Aegon once forged empire. Banners of each constituency draped balconies. Loom weavers, stonemasons, maesters, nobles. Sansa addressed crowd first, voice calm and fierce. Lady Meredith Manderly followed. Speaking for common folk, Archmaester Valar, Sam's mentor, took 3rd seat representing scholarship. They swore to charter. Trine formed. Then Jon approached dais to present Umbrax's harness, engraved with crest of realm, into council care. The dragon watched, eyes glowing amber. Jon raised voice. I, Jon Snow, step down as protector and stand as citizen. Sworn to uphold law as any other. He removed wolf-clasp cloak, folded it, handed to Sam, who would deposit it among records. Applause resounded like thunder mixed with sobs. A hush fell as Umbrax moved. He strode forward, massive head lowering until snout touched courtyard stones. The dragon remained still. The new triune stepped forward, each laying palm on ridged brow. Connection sealed. Authority transferred not by blood, but by mutual oath. Umbrax's flames would answer council, not king. When ceremony ended, children flooded courtyard, offering Jon wreaths of winter roses and ice lilies. He knelt, accepting. Sansa approached, eyes glistening. "You could have kept crown." "Crown's purpose to be removed," he said. "Where will you go?" "North. There's still work." She nodded. Smile tremulous. "Letters, then." "Often. Always." Always. 1 week later, Jon stood on headland above White Harbor Quay. The sea crashed below. He wore plain traveler's cloak. Gendry shook his hand, promising new forge at Castle Black. Davos loaded last crates of donated sails. Arya arrived, tousled hair, eyes bright. Leaving without farewell duel? She chided. He drew practice blade. They sparred briefly on frosted planks, laughter punching cold air. She hugged him tight. "The world's big," she whispered, "but not big enough to hide from me." He grinned, counting on it. Ghost leapt onto ship's deck, tail whipping salt spray. Jon mounted ramp. Umbrax circled overhead, but would fly border instead of crossing sea. They'd meet near Skirling Pass. Sails billowed. White Harbor receded, lighthouse flame dwindling to ember. Jon stood at bow, hair whipping, heart surprisingly light. He had been bastard, Lord Commander, protector, now wanderer again, yet realm thrummed behind him like hearthfire kept by capable hands. He opened Sam's latest letter. Talk of founding a school at Old Town dedicated to studying interplay of ice and fire magics. Sam insisted moon tea served daily in cafeteria to curb unwanted brawl-born bastards. Jon chuckled, folding letter close to heart. A gull cried overhead, Ghost barked. Jon gazed north. Ice mountains glimmered beyond horizon like pale ramparts of possibility. He thought of handshake with Frost Priest, of Triune sworn before dragon, of children shouting protector's name though protector gone. He smiled. Balance. It was never destination but practice repeated. Step, breath, promise. Ice meets fire, wolf meets dragon, man meets night. Jon Snow, bastard of winter, blood of dragon, closed eyes, inhaled tang of sea and snow mixed. Then he opened them and walked forward, ready to begin again, one quiet step at a time, into the vast white hush of tomorrow.